hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Background for our consideration this morning of the inner light, I'm reading two paragraphs from Jane Steger's Leaves from a Secret Journal. For as long as I can remember, I've had days of happiness when my sense of well-being appeared to be vaguely connected with a feeling of inner light. The sensation of light was not very definite, was rather perhaps a glow of well-being. Yet it was sufficiently pronounced for one of the earliest notes in my journal, speaking of the times of felicity when the things of the spirit seemed very real to read. Within is a soft, almost tangible radiance, and for a time I seemed to be walking in a streak of sunlight. And then, some years ago, an old lady near the end of her life paused to look back and recall some of its great moments. Among other things, she wrote of an occasion when she was walking in the country. She was under great strain, and suddenly the strain snapped like the breaking of a cord. To quote her own words, I was flooded with an ineffable soul light which seemed to radiate from a great personality with whom I was in immediate touch. I felt it to be the touch of God. The ecstasy was beyond description. I was passing through a patch of beggars' grass with its wiry stems ending in feathery heads. Every head shone and glistened like pearls. I could hardly walk for the overwhelming sense of the divine presence and its joy. I almost saw God. A little dog that had been walking quietly beside her looked up in her face at this point and began to bark with great excitement. I do not doubt that he saw in her face the same effulgence that she saw in the grass. I'm glad to think that the glory of God is at the heart of beggars' grass as well as at the heart of man, and that little dogs as well as human beings may see this and rejoice. The inner light in all of the literature and the experience of the religion of the inner life of mankind, wherever we find it, without regard to the particular context by which the definition of meaning is sensed and felt and interpreted, always this kind of religion has in it some insight, some feeling for, some sense of, some interpretation of what may be regarded as the inner light, a quality of personality, or perhaps even a better word would be a dimension of personality which seems to have an element in it that is beyond thought and beyond feeling and beyond interpretation. And the two words that are used is inner light. They are symbolic words, and what are they saying? These words are saying that there is this element in life which is a luminous element. This, you may recall, is one of the things that has been characterized by the men about whom we have been thinking, Jacob Boehme and Meister Eckhart. It is found in the prologue to the fourth gospel, which we read last Sunday and which we have read today. The light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. And in the Christian tradition, Jesus Christ is identified with and is regarded as the creative and dynamic expression, for instance, of this light which is inherent in the life of man. A man like John Wycliffe, for instance, felt that the light was natural to man. It had to do with that which was a part of the essential nature of man, that it was always there in man, that it was a part of what may be regarded as the givenness of God, the ground of God that is present in human life. he felt that because of the fall of man, this thing which was natural to man's life had been dimmed, it had been made obscure, it had been somewhat lost, but not altogether lost. And when a man became aware of the new possibilities of his life, as John Wycliffe saw it, expressed in the whole ministry and life of Jesus Christ, then this thing that was there was activated and awakened, and it became sensitized and began to influence the life of the man. This idea, you see, that here is something that is generic in man's spirit, this quality, that it is always there, it's a part of the givenness of life. And this has created many problems for mankind. Certain religious sects have been built up around this idea, which caused this notion, this aspect of personal religious experience, and this caused them to feel that they were independent of any revelation of any kind, that there was a fundamental autonomy in the human spirit, and that God was operative, this light was operative in the individual. There were no conditions under which it was available, but it was a part of the birthright of man, and therefore, if I want to know what the truth is, all I need do is to look at my own little Geiger counter. I don't need to have any point of reference outside of myself, a whole group of people who were part of the friends of God, and they were the ranters. They felt that there was so much autonomy in the human spirit that they could not be guided by anything. The truth is only the truth as it is seen by me, and there's an element of truth in that, but not quite all the truth. I may have a cup full of water out of the Charles River, and all the water in my cup will be Charles River water, but all the water in the Charles River will not be in my cup. This is the idea here. Now, the next aspect of this, that the inner light is something that becomes illumined in you only under certain circumstances of religious conversion. It is something that is imposed upon personality from without. It is an invasion, like the English walnut grafted onto whatever that other kind of walnut is that it grows on. I don't remember, but it's grafted. It has no autonomy, no life of itself, as far as what it draws upon to sustain it, but there's a quality in the buds that produces a peculiar fruit. But when we think, I'll move back to this notion in just a minute. When we think about the inner light, we naturally think of the Society of Friends. For here is a group of people who have made the question of the inner light a very central to their religious experience and religious insight. And even in the history and in the movement of the Society of Friends, these two notions concerning the relevancy of the inner light have persisted. Sometimes George Fox seems to feel that the inner light is indigenous, that it belongs to the very nature of man. Some other times he seems to feel that the inner light is there only when it is brought by this invasion of Jesus Christ in the life as he expressed it. And for a long time, these two notions flowed along within the movement of the interpretation of the inner light of the friends. But however we may interpret it, whether we interpret the inner light as being that which is indigenous in the life of man, or that which comes into the life of man at some moment, the ground of the inner light, it seems to me, rests in what, in my feeling and thought and limited experience, is the very fluid center of personality. Not expressed not in what I want now, expressed not in what I want tomorrow, this week, this year, but what underneath all the days and the weeks and the months and the years, that which seems to me to move at the fluid center of my deepest area of consent. That nothing ever quite freezes over. Last winter when I was in Milwaukee, a friend of mine took me down by the bay, I guess it is. Yes, by the bay and or the lake. Well, anyway, it was one of the other. And it was frozen. It was the middle of the winter and it was frozen. But as we came along, he pulled his car up to the side of the road and he said, "Come over here, I want to show you something." So I went, and as we approached the shore, I noticed that there was an area that was full of various kinds of birds, geese, all kinds of flying creatures, and the water was flowing. It was just fluid. But all around it was frozen. And he said, many years ago, there was a lady here who had wealth, and she loved the birds, and she hated for them to fly so far away all the time. So she gave some money to the city so the city could pipe a stream of hot water down under something so that always this hot water is flowing, and always around this the water is fluid. And it doesn't matter what the external temperature is. The fluid center remains. Now, I think that there is a fluid center in man in which the primary disclosure of what a man is revealed to him, in which he may discover clues to the meaning of the movement of the life about him. And with reference to this, the persistent temptation is to try to protect this kind of indigenous spiritual autonomy of the human spirit from all of the vagaries of self-deception. It may be just a form of subjectivism that, and I cannot know whether or not I'm really being fooled by this. And it is for this reason always that that the religions which have to do with the inner life have insisted that there should be some other than self-reference in which the assumption is that the same movement of the Spirit of God that is operative in the individual's life is also operative in those other lives. And if they are moving out from the same center, the word will be the same word. I remember once, many years ago, I was invited to preach at the Friends meeting in Germantown Friends. And I'd had no primary exposure to the Friends, and I was a little, I said, I want to speak out of my center without having my mind to interfere with the free flowing of the Spirit of God in me. So this is the way I feel that they worship, so I will worship in the same way. I will not prepare. I traveled 950 miles to get to Philadelphia, and this is pretty risky because I was supposed to preach at the regular time, and if I had nothing to say, then I would not get my expenses. So I went and I sat on the facing seat with the man who was the head of the meeting, and behind us were two other rows facing the congregation, and several people sat on those. And then the quiet began to settle in. And at first, I could hardly restrain my mind. It wanted to go to work, because in a few minutes I would have to stand on my feet and work. But I held it in firm control for once and waited. And I heard noises in my spirit that I'd never heard before. For a while, my inward part seemed to be one churning riot. And little by little, the pressure of the quiet began to close in on me and to shift from outside of me to inside of me. And then I hit a point of which I was not aware scarcely, except I know that I stopped trying to hold my mind in check. I stopped trying to do anything. I let myself down in this. And then my mind, with my imagination, spelled out a word, literally, just as these skywriters do in the planes. And I saw the word, and then the next word, and one part of my mind knew what the sentence was from the gospel, but the other part of me was held almost as a bird is charmed by a snake. And the next word, and the next word, and the next word, until the whole sentence was there across my mind, and I looked at it. And then my mind closed in on it and began to break it down and make material out of it for presentation. And when I was ready, I put my hands on the railing in front, shifted my weight, my left foot back, and was about to stand up when behind me I heard the voice of a lady quoting the passage. And then all over the place, people began talking to the point. So that my desperation moved in another direction, because I said, I won't have a chance to stand up to say anything. And if I don't, then there again I will not earn my bread. And finally, at the end, near the end, I spoke. There is a fluid center in us all. But because of the carking cares by which our days are surrounded, because of the wide variety of our anxieties and our fears and our needs that often are so searching and paralyzing, we move and think and speak and act out of something that is so much less than the fluid center, where the tryst of the human spirit is held in tight communion with the living God. Not what I want today, not what I want tomorrow, not what I want this minute or that minute, this month or that month, but what underneath all the days, all the hours, all the weeks, all the months, all the years, that which I seek. So that if I had nothing else, if there were no months, no days, no years, this I would still seek. It is given indigenously. It is given by grace. Both of them. Both of them. Both of them. Leave me not to the tempest of all the meaningful superficialities of my life, O God. Drive me, O God, to my inmost center, where, stripped bare of all that cloys and clutters, I may know thee even as I know me. This is the heart of the cry of thy children. O God, holy God, our Father.